King Cold has been killed by the Super Saiyan. Trunks stands there in a glowing golden light that Vegeta claims has to be a Super Saiyan, and much to everybody's surprise, Trunks actually confirms it as such. He begins explaining his tragic backstory. He comes from a future timeline in which two androids popped up out of nowhere. A couple miles away from South City, two androids known as 17 and 18 begin wreaking havoc. The Z-Fighters tried to stop them, but the incredible power the androids wielded proved to be far superior than anything that the group had. It was said that even Goku's Ikari Kaioken combo would have done nothing to them, although it was never actually proven because Goku died a couple years before. In about 2 years' time, Goku will get the heart virus. Before he ever gets the chance to fight against the androids, he'll be taken out by an unstoppable threat. That of disease. No matter how high your power level, you are still susceptible to illness, and this was true for Goku as well. He died of this mysterious heart disease before he got the chance to defend the Earth, but even if he tried, he most likely would have failed in that task as well. After seeing everybody he loved die though, Gohan was able to transcend the power of Ikari. He became a Super Saiyan. But even Super Saiyan was nothing in comparison to these two tyrannical Terminator teenagers. Eventually, Gohan met up with Trunks and Bulma, who gave him refuge, and the chance to maybe actually get the upper hand on the androids. If he were to be able to train Trunks to get Super Saiyan, then he's sure they'd be able to take down 17 and 18 once and for all, but sadly, Trunks never actually got the form, and based on manga content, especially the fact he actually did get Super Saiyan in the manga, that probably wouldn't have been enough anyway. So Trunks, with the help of Bulma, was able to go back in time after Gohan's death, which was the catalyst for Trunks' own Super Saiyan transformation. So, alongside giving Goku the heart virus medication, he would also all tell them all how to achieve Super Saiyan. They have to find what means most to them in their lives, and then imagine losing it. For Goku, what if he lost Chi-Chi and Gohan? For Gohan, what if he lost his mother and his father? For Vegeta, what if he lost Bulma? Well, actually, that might not do much for him right now, but what if his hairline was even worse? And hopefully, through imagining these things, they'll be able to tap into Super Saiyan. But past that, Gohan did have one last word of advice for all of them there. They need to try and find a way to mix Super Saiyan with Ikari. Gohan had both forms in the future timeline, and he was constantly trying to mix the two together. He realized they were separate powers, and he knew if he could tap into both at the same time, the androids would be child's play. But because he was never able to do it, it cost him his life. Trunks hopes that through working together for the next 3 years, they'll all be able to accomplish what Gohan never could. And then, with all of that finally accomplished, Trunks steps back into the time machine and heads home, hoping for a brighter future in this timeline. And now, with the goal of accessing Super Saiyan and even mixing it with Ikari in mind, Goku and Gohan would begin training to accomplish these goals. Vegeta would as well, but he would be working on his own. He didn't want to align himself directly with Goku and Gohan at the moment because he does still have a bit of a grudge against them. He's becoming a better person, but he's not there yet. And while he does this, he would be accompanied by Piccolo, who would rather train with the prince than Goku and Gohan in this version of events, seeing as Vegeta's approach to unlocking Super Saiyan is just basic strength training. He believes the stronger he is, eventually he'll unlock the golden-haired form, whereas Goku and Gohan are trying to master Ikari, seeing it as the first step to unlocking Super Saiyan. And since Piccolo doesn't have either of those two transformations, it would make more sense for him to train with Vegeta than Goku and Gohan. Plus, admittedly, Piccolo doesn't really trust Vegeta here, which is fair. He was indirectly responsible for the Namekian's death, as well as countless Namekian lives being taken on Namek, so it'd probably be best to have an eye kept on the prince. Although, whenever Vegeta isn't training, he would be spending time with Bulma, which eventually results results in Trunks being born, although probably earlier than before, since the two of them did spend a couple months on an alien planet with nothing better to do than, well, humping like bunnies. Although eventually the 3 years of training would be up, and the androids would attack just like Trunks said. So they all rush out there and confront Android 19 and 20. And even though they don't know these aren't the androids from Trunks' future, they are a bit surprised that Trunks would have this much trouble with these two weirdos. One's a clown and the other's an old man. However, they are still pretty strong. And while fighting Android 19, Goku would contract the heart virus and need to go home to take his medicine. Keep in mind the meds were not a vaccine, so Goku didn't forget to take them. He was supposed to when symptoms showed. He just didn't carry it with him at all times, and it's not like you carry Pepto-Bismol with you to work, even though you know eventually you're going to have a nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea. I will never forgive them for changing that song in the commercials. I'm getting off track. Vegeta would step in, demonstrating that he too had achieved a Super Saiyan, before then ripping the arms off of Android 19 and making the android finally feel fear, using a Big Bang attack to finish him off once and for all before beginning to deal with the Mad Doctor, but he doesn't actually get the chance to as Gero flees, realizing he is way out of his depth here. They hunt him down, but they can't find his exact location because he doesn't have Sensible Ki, as a result of being an android. Although when he goes to steal Piccolo's energy slowly, one by one, they would all realize where Gero is because Piccolo's ki is fading quickly. So they rush over and Gohan is able to save his master, as then Piccolo asks for a Senzu Bean, having most of his stamina depleted. After eating it, he would surge into a new level of power, not getting his Zenkai boost, just showing off his full strength and attacking Gero, cleaving off one of his hands with a simple chop. The Mad Doctor is infuriated, but he knows there's nothing he can do. So he rushes off yet again, this time into his secret laboratory. He's able to close the door before they get in and releases 17 and 18, opening the door and allowing for them to finally gaze upon his greatest creation, who just so happens to kill him near immediately. 17, with a single kick, knocks off Gero's head. He stomps down on it, finally laying the evil scientist to rest down in hell where he belongs. Although, just because Gero is gone doesn't mean the threat is, as both 17 and 18 were the real deal, the androids they were warned about, and they release 16, the by far strongest creation of Gero, save the secret project he has down in the sublab. Although Trunks had arrived on the scene, and now seeing 17 and 18 yet again being unleashed on the world, he lashes out, using a burning attack, but it does nothing. They're unscathed even if the lab was destroyed. Even as a Super Saiyan, Trunks was nothing in comparison. The Z Fighters now see firsthand what Trunks was talking about. Vegeta would take on 18, and Trunks would rush in to help. 17 would try and stop him, but Gohan and Piccolo would take on that android. Gohan has Super Saiyan here, and Piccolo is far more powerful because he was training with Vegeta in the gravity room, rather than just training out in the middle of nowhere with Goku and Gohan. Vegeta had gotten strong enough to actually overcome 18's raw power advantage, but because of Super Saiyan's incredible drain on stamina, he was quickly losing power, whereas 18 stayed the same. The androids don't lose stamina, meaning that they can go 100% the entire time and stay just that strong. And even though Trunks was definitely benefiting Vegeta here, the two of them, even working together, could not take down 18. They did get pretty dang close though, and Gohan and Piccolo were even worse off, because Piccolo was almost as strong as Vegeta, and Gohan was far weaker than Trunks. Even if Gohan was as strong or stronger than Trunks here, it wouldn't really matter, seeing as 17 was the stronger of those two androids. They had the weaker group going up against the stronger threat, and even the stronger group couldn't beat the weaker threat. Either way, they're completely screwed here. Thankfully though, the androids in this timeline were nowhere near as evil as in the future, and honestly, working together, the Z Fighters would have been no threat to them, so they decide to allow them to live. For now, that is. Although the cyborgs do tell the group that if they were to get in their way again, well, the androids wouldn't be so generous. Krillin would give them all Senzus because they were plenty beat up, and Piccolo would launch off to the lookout. Enraged that he couldn't defend the planet he had sworn to, Vegeta would head to Capsule Corp looking to get strong enough to beat those glorified washing machines, and Trunks would follow his father. Gohan would go home to check on his, and for now, the Z-Fighters are all split up, looking for some way to take down the androids, even though it doesn't look great. Back on the lookout, Piccolo and Kami would be having a conversation, discussing whether or not they should fuse. Piccolo believes it's the best and possibly only idea to protect the Earth, whereas Kami says he doesn't believe it's the right idea. Not only do they need the Dragon Balls, but they also need a Guardian, and Piccolo sure as hell can't be one, because only a couple of years ago, he was proclaiming himself the Demon King. But Piccolo claps back, saying that's the only way to stop the androids and protect the Earth. If he wants to know what happens when the two of them don't fuse, Trunks has some stories that he can tell him. And seeing how passionately Piccolo cares about the Earth, he now understands that this is not King Piccolo. This is a completely different man. So albeit a little reluctant, Kami does still decide to fuse into the young Namekian, saying that no matter what happens, he'll always be there to make sure Piccolo stays on the right path. The two fuse and his power is incredible. He's sure he can take down the androids, but then something pops into his head. The thing that Kami was worrying about, that evil power he can sense down on the Earth's surface. He rushes down to confront whatever this is before the androids because it seems to be a more pressing issue. He puts two fingers to his forehead and teleports over there instantly, before then beginning to fight against Cell. It seems even at first, but Piccolo is extremely suppressed. He's making sure not to show off his full power, that way Cell doesn't know how strong he really is. Eventually, Cell would have drained his entire arm of energy, causing him to need to take it off. However, first he feigns weakness, getting Cell to spill all of the juicy details as to who he is. The Bugman explains that he's a creation of Dr. Gero, the perfect being, or at least he will be once he absorbs 17 and 18. He comes from a distant timeline, kind of like Trunks, in fact, exactly like Trunks. He had stolen the time traveler's, time machine, that way he could come back to a reality in which 17 and 18 still live, because at least in one timeline, he was capable of defeating the two androids, but here he hasn't, at least not yet. And by the time that Cell has absorbed enough humans and is strong enough to absorb those two androids, Trunks will never get the chance to destroy them, although the energy of one Namekian might actually be enough to jumpstart the process. So Cell lunges towards Piccolo, who rips off his arm and regenerates it, before then hitting Cell straight in the stomach, causing him to recoil in pain and drop to the floor. He's not dead and nowhere near, but he is still hurt, and his power seems less than it was a moment ago, although not to a noticeable enough degree. So as the fight carries on, if you can even call it that, as Piccolo beats down Cell, his energy keeps getting stolen, as suddenly all of the energy he had gotten from absorbing those humans is gone. He feels weak and helpless, and Piccolo suddenly shouts out Masenko, and the Bugman is seemingly completely destroyed. But as we know, that's not how Cell works. Piccolo doesn't though, not just yet, and Cell wants it to stay that way. He decides to stay hidden, masking his ki while he begins his process all over again, except this time with a pretty sizable Zenkai. Goku would recover from the heart virus, while Piccolo goes off in search of androids 17 and 18. Eventually, he would find them and begin his clash with 17. The two would have a pretty great battle, while Goku brings all the other Saiyans up to the lookout. He would explain the Room of Spirit and Time to everyone there before Vegeta and Trunks take their first turn inside, spending an entire day in there while Piccolo and 17 continue their battle, although it does seem to be in the Namekians' favor. In fact, quite considerably. seeing as Piccolo was stronger before absorbing Kami, and that transfers over. Plus, he absorbed a lot of power from Cell, taking in all of his stolen power and becoming quite strong in the process, requiring 18 to jump in and help her brother. Although 17 rejects this, saying that he believes he can take him on his own. He doesn't want her help, at least not right now. Fighting Cell was a bit of a double-edged sword, and 17 can tell that, because even though Piccolo got a whole hell of a lot stronger from it, he lost a lot of energy, not only from just getting into a fight with someone that strong, but also from losing an arm and having to regenerate it. So even though he's stronger, his stamina is low, and 17 can tell. Pretty soon, Piccolo's movements become sloppier, his hits do less, and even though they're still hard, they become substantially less so as the fight goes on, and eventually 17 does have a definitive upper hand. Although none of this matters, as suddenly they feel an extreme ki spike up in the distance. Android 18 had been absorbed by Cell, and 16 had no time to react. Now being semi-perfect, Cell wipes 16 off the face of the earth, because the ginger robot would get defensive and try and fight back against the person who absorbed his friend. 16 would still survive, but he is heavily damaged. Piccolo and 17 would work together to try and hold off Cell, but in his semi-perfect state, he's just too strong. But before reaching perfection, Vegeta and Trunks would intervene, coming to the scene and absolutely dog-walking Cell. Piccolo would use instant transmission to get him and 17 out of there, that way Cell can't get to him. Normally, Vegeta would allow Cell to try and reach perfection, but seeing as 17 isn't here and both him and Trunks are far stronger than Cell, it doesn't really seem necessary. Perfect Cell probably would be nothing to the prince, so he just decides to waste the android right there and then. Although, using a super Gallic gun, Vegeta would destroy every single cell of the monster. The father and son duo would then arrive back on the lookout, as everyone is debating what to do with 17. Either Vegeta or Trunks could defeat him easily, and seeing as Piccolo would have been healed by Dende, who would have been brought in sooner, the Namekian warrior could take care of him just as easy. So what do they do with him since he's practically a non-threat? Well, Trunks says that they should kill him now. He was an evil, terrible person in the future, and he probably is still here. But Piccolo rejects this idea, saying that if he and Vegeta are any example, then people can change. And technically, 17 hasn't done anything yet, at least not in this timeline. So why not just teach him to use his powers for good, rather than going around killing people? In fact, Piccolo would offer to do it himself, train 17 to be a good person and reform like Piccolo had, and 17 agrees, realizing the alternative is his death. And when Goku and Gohan get out of the time chamber, they concur, saying that this would probably be the best choice. Trunks relents as well, saying that it's a pretty interesting idea. A good Android 17, something he never thought he'd see. Although when the gang is talking about using the Dragon Balls to revive everybody killed by Cell, Android 17 would ask if that includes his sister, and if it doesn't, if there's any way to bring her back with those as well. And everyone is a bit wary on whether or not they should do that, since she is also technically evil in the future. The same argument goes for her as with 17. So they agree, and even though it doesn't fit into the circumstances of the first wish, they can use an entirely separate wish on Shinron now that it's Dende's dragon instead of Kami's. So with 18 also being revived, Piccolo has 2 new students. And for the next 7 years, the Z Fighters continue their training, but Gohan does take a step back from it. He does still keep up with his training, Goku would never let him slack off on that, but he does still take a slightly different route than the others, choosing to go to school, become a scholar, and all around live the life his mother wanted him to. It's a little sad to think that Trunks had left before he got the chance to see at least one Gohan was living the life he always wanted. Although not everything is peaceful, as with a tournament around the corner, a new threat rears its ugly head.